The budget is one of the most important financial decisions the finance ministry takes in the entire year. And this budget of 2021 and 22 is one of the most crucial budgets because this is just coming after what the economy has gone through in 2020, which is the effect of COVID. Now, a lot of people actually also know that the economy hasn't been doing very well right after demonetization, and the COVID was the most massive blow that we've ever seen. Now, this budget is the crucial key driver, the screwdriver, which can tweak the economy in such a way that we can go back into the growing economy which we once were. Now, I have these 13-point key takeaways for all the people who are watching this video so you can understand the kind of impact this budget will have in your life. So let's get started with that. So first I want to start with more generically, what are the main common things that affect the economy as a whole? So you'll be surprised to know that the current fiscal deficit of our economy, the fiscal deficit is the earning of the economy minus, of the government rather. So earning of the government minus the expenditure of the government is the fiscal deficit, if it's a negative number. If it's a positive number, then it is a fiscal surplus. Currently, India is in a 9.5% fiscal deficit of the entire GDP. You would understand this is not a small number. So this is one key concern area that I see for the economy as we speak today, because this is a whopping 9.5%, which typically used to be around the region of 3 to 4% before COVID. So what is the government going to do around it? Which brings us to the second point. The finance ministry has decided to disinvest from a lot of businesses which they have owned, which is public sector banks. 2 of them will be disinvested this year, and they will also be exiting some part of that from the LIC, which is the Life Insurance Corporation of India, using an IPO. So the government has been doing this activity for some time now, and they will continue to do so over the next financial year as well, selling the stake, or rather selling their assets to overcome the revenue loss that they have. And they are overlooking about 6.8% of fiscal deficit again in the next financial year 2021 and 22. The 9.5% was last year. So you would understand that a lot of money is being lost by the government, and they're trying to overcome that by selling their assets. 1.75 lakh crore rather. So 1.75 lakh crore is the money that they're looking to disinvest in the coming financial year, starting 1st April 2021. Now let's talk about the third point, and this is something I'm happy about. We are seeing that the GST collection of the government have actually gone up to the record high. This is 1.2 lakh crores in the single month of January 2021, which is just a month before the budget. Now, this is clearly showing signs of growth coming back into the economy, but I also want you to be more neutral towards this, because understand that some element of this GST revenue is coming from that sort of turnover which is happening in the companies, which could not happen during the lockdown. In simpler terms, for the 3, 4, 5 months, the economy was not working. There, a lot of businesses were shut down completely. So this is just overcoming the past demand which is being fulfilled now. We would need to see a much more consistency of increase in the GST collection as well as quarter-wise GDP to be able to say that this is truly a true bounce back rather than just overcoming the demand which was not met during the lockdown period. But overall, I would definitely say this is a big positive for all of us, seeing that the economy is bouncing back and the GST collection revenues are certainly reflecting the same. Now, these are all the points which are reflecting just the general information about the economy. Now, let's go by asset and see what kind of decisions has the finance ministry taken and how do they affect you on an asset by asset basis. Let's start with the first asset class, which is precious metals. This is one of the biggest news that you would have heard. Now, the government has reduced the custom duty on gold and silver from 12.5% to 7.5%. This is a 5% reduction in the GST, or sorry, this is a 5% reduction in the import duty. Now, what does it mean for us? For the people who had already invested into physical gold, now this is not a good news for them because the price of their gold is down by 5% all of a sudden. Now, for the people who are now wanting to invest into gold because the gold has already risen up in prices in the last 1 year, this is great news for them because this is the automatic 5% discount. But this is only applicable to physical gold. You would be surprised to note that the ETFs of gold do not have the custom duty built into them, so they are completely unaffected. So had you invested into gold ETFs, you are unaffected because of this price drop, so you would not have lost money. Amazingly, even for sovereign gold bonds, even their prices have not gone down. So people who had invested into sovereign gold bond and ETF are unaffected with this. People who had invested into physical gold, they have suffered a loss because of this. People who are now wanting to invest into physical gold to make a jewelry per se, those people are really the ones who are going to benefit out of this. Gold as physical investment, you anyways know what my view is on that, so you would know what action to take accordingly. Now let's talk about the next asset class, which is equity. So there hasn't been any change in the taxation. Now this is point number 5, by the way. We're talking about the changes in equity. In equity, there hasn't been change in the long-term or short-term capital gains. However, the finance ministry, to boost the very micro companies or other startups who we are talking about in this context, these companies have actually got the benefit of 1 year extension of capital gain exemption for the investors who put money into this. So if you are someone who's invested in a startup, you will not have to pay capital gain for another 1 year, which is something which was already being carried on from the last financial year. So this brings in a lot of motivation for venture capitalists, for angel investors, people who are willing to invest in startups. But then again, in an economic scenario like this, the one we're living in, the probability of startup failure, I believe, will also be higher than any other time. So I think of this as more of a neutral stance because it's good for smart investors who are already investing in startups, venture capitalists or institutions. But for retail investors, I don't think this makes much a difference because they mostly anyways don't invest in startups. And even if they do, the climate of startups isn't as great, especially with what is happening in the economy. Now let's talk about point number 6. Now we're moving to the next asset class with this as well. Now we'll be talking about property. So the good thing that I see is that the government is trying to find innovative ways to bring up the real estate sector. And they have created a new proposal to make it easy for foreign investors to invest in the Indian infrastructure projects. There are some companies who already started taking decisions and actions on this internally as well. And the effect of that is something we'll be seeing over the time. However, this I don't think is a very big drastic step. It's just one more step doing the right thing, but it's not something that is going to change the real estate sector, definitely. Now point number 7 is the proposal to make dividend payments of REITs and InvITs exempt from TDS. This is a beautiful move. Why is it a beautiful move? Assuming that you have to pay 10% TDS on REITs and InvITs, now these are both very high dividend income yielding investments, you are losing 10% of your income, and then at the time of filing at the end of financial year is when you can claim it back if it is rightfully claimable for you, depending on your taxation and tax file. For people who are investing in formats where they do not have to pay income, for example, if your total income in a file is less than 5 lakh rupees and the income you receive from REITs initially will reduce the tax and then you have to claim it back. So it's an unnecessary loss of cash flow for you. From that perspective, this is a very good move. So definitely a welcome move from the property sector. But then again, not many people know about REITs and InvITs. And so it's only going to affect those institutions or very limited retail investors who are actually doing so. The one best move that I found in the real estate sector, which is point number 8, is the reduction of 80 and they have extended that for another year. What does that mean? This is the 1.5 lakh reduction on the payment of interest on affordable housing only. This is extended till 31st March 2022. So effectively, someone who has a house loan and or is going to plan for a new house, the first house they're going to buy, they're going to have 1.5 lakhs of this reduction and 2 lakhs of existing reduction, total 3.5 lakhs of reduction of the taxation, which means that 3.5 lakh of the money that they've paid as interest to this is completely going to be not charged in taxation, which is why it's tax deductible, not tax exempt. This also effectively means for someone who has bought a say flat of 50 lakh rupees and that is on a 7% interest, so that 3.5 lakh rupees of the entire year's interest is now going to be completely tax deductible. That's a big move because effectively that saves a lot of money for someone who is going for that affordable segment. So this, I believe, is going to spur the demand of the affordable segment, which is around 50 lakhs per se. It's going to help the actual investor, and also is going to help those businesses which are supporting construction into affordable segment. In fact, I have been able to see that the government has really taken a lot of steps toward the affordable segment as well. So even before the budget, about 4 or 5 months before the budget. So this is one area which I believe will continue to grow. At the same time, this will come at the expense of all of those people who are already builders and they have all these flats which they haven't been able to sell. It's going to become harder for them now because the affordable segment has gained more traction and the mid-size or premium is obviously going to struggle. More mid-size right now because that is what is in most abundance and in oversupply, whose demand is now going to contract even further because of steps like these. So that area is going to suffer at the benefit of this certain area. So mid-size housing is going to be affected because of affordability, what I mean. So now let's talk about taxation, point number 9. So the first thing, and the CAs are going to love this, and that is the income tax filing returns. So all to further the ease of people or accountants or chartered accountants, anyone for that matter, who does tax filing, a pre-filled return of TDS, of salary tax payments, capital gains from securities or dividend income, all of that system will now be created. So that saves a lot of time, lot of admin time, and certainly cost as well, I presume, from that perspective. So makes the process of tax filing much easier. So this is definitely a big welcome step because we are moving towards digitalization and modernization of what we do. Another very good aspect is for the people who are above the age of 75. Now this is point number 10, by the way. People all who are above the age of 75, if they're only on pension income or interest income, they do not have to do any tax filing anymore. So again, definitely a good move. I'm not sure how many people really will be able to get this benefit, but certainly people in that region of more than 75 are predominantly mostly on interest income only. So a lot of hassle for them is going to get completely taken away. So that's certainly a great move by the finance minister. Now let's talk about point number 11, again in taxation. We're talking about, this is a certain disappointment that there is no tax relief given this year, nor there is an increase in standard deduction, there was no raise in tax slabs or fall in the tax rates, because all of this had already happened last year. If you remember, there were 2 tax slabs now allowed, that if you go for the old one or the new one. The new one had up to 5 lakh was completely tax free. So from 5 to 7.5 lakh, I think at 5%, and from 7.5 lakhs to 10 lakhs, it had 10%. So that anyways reduces the tax liability of people making income until the point of 10 lakhs, and they do not have any compulsory ATC or DD or ATD investment. So definitely great for them. So this wasn't expected, but then again, I was hoping that some sort of relief was given to people because of what happened last year, maybe as a one time, but that did not happen. So that is something as a negative that I would say. Now let's talk about point number 12. We're coming all the way to the very end. This is something that will affect the people who have high salaries. We're talking about the EPF or the PF, whichever way you call it, the deduction that you have. So the PF or EPF deduction is 12% of the salary. The government, the finance ministry has now said that up to 2.5 lakh of contribution, whatever interest that you get over and above of that is what is going to be tax chargeable. If your contribution is up to 2.5 lakhs, whatever interest you get on that, that is going to be tax free. What does that mean? For someone who has a salary, a basic salary of up to 1.73 lakhs, this person's 12% contribution towards his PF is going to be about, and over the next 12 months, that will equal to 2.5 lakhs. So if your basic salary is more than 1.73 lakhs and you are into deduction of PF or EPF, in that sense, it will not be any tax efficient for you anymore. So this is certainly something that is going to pinch people who are at corporate jobs, high salary, and they obviously will not be able to do anything about it because PF is going to be compulsory deducted and they will not be able to get the benefit of taxation. So it's obviously not great for people who are making high salaries, but for other people it is completely unaffected. So this is more of a Robin Hood approach that they're taking money from the richer people and trying to bring this money back into the government or into the spending for the poor. Now comes the last one, and this one is certainly insurance. The 13th point, the final point, is on insurance. So the ULIP premium, so this is something the insurance companies or agents definitely would not like. That the ULIP premium, ULIP is a unit-linked insurance plan. Now this is that sort of insurance where you are investing and doing insurance both at the same time. You already know my views on ULIP insurances. So this has become even not a great, you can say this is not a great move for the insurance industry, definitely. But overall for everyone, I think it's a great move. The move is that the premium of 2.5 lakh rupees a year, up to that point, whatever maturity money that you would get is tax free. But if you have premiums that you're paying more than 2.5 lakhs a year, then the maturity money will not be tax free. However, in case of a death, then the money that comes, those proceeds are tax free. So if you're paying a ULIP premium of less than 2.5 lakhs, it will continue the way it is. But if it is any more than that, your return, the exemption of the taxes on the capital you're going to get back as maturity, that will be taxed. So I think this brings more parity between ELSS and insurances, because ELSS fell into the same category without the 2.5 lakh bracket though, that whatever maturity money you're going to get will be taxed at 10% long-term capital gains in equity. Now this year, even ULIPs, going forward, the ULIPs premium of over 2.5 lakhs will be taxed. So again, people who have the capacity to pay that sort of money, again the Robin Hood approach, money taking the money from the people who can afford to pay, have that sort of income, and then bringing it back into the total revenues of the government, trying to reduce the fiscal deficit. So overall, my view is that it was an all-right budget. It wasn't nothing great. Apart from, I think the one main thing that I really liked was the housing, affordable housing, something really good for the poor, or you can say people who don't have a house. That was great. Apart from that, it was, you can say, just an average budget, to be honest. In fact, the finance minister didn't really have much. She didn't really have much in her hands because of what had happened in the last financial year. And they had made some, especially the taxation scheme was a good idea. The new and old taxation scheme was a good idea last financial year. So there wasn't much in their hands to do. And COVID made it even worse here on. Although I feel that, some relaxation of taxes should have happened, but it did not. Having said and done, people are still thinking, why are the stock markets rising if this budget is still an average budget? I wanted to understand the perception or the expectation of the stock markets or the financial institutions a lot of FIIs and DIIs, in fact, even the retail investors were thinking that there will be more, either there'll be introduction of COVID cess, or there will be increment in the taxation for the super rich, or there'll be a high rate of tax in the equity segment, or the corporates will be taxed more. So none of that actually happened, and because of that, the markets are happy and they're enjoying that because they are not unaffected. They are not affected because of this. This is the reason why the stock markets are going up, and in the short term, they can continue this rally as well. So this does not mean the budget is great. It's just that their negative expectation eventually ended up being neutral, and they are just countering that or pricing that in the market as we go. So I really hope you like this extended video of all the 13 key points that I thought are relevant to people like you and me to understand how this budget affects us and how can we get the maximum out of this budget, or better yet, how is it that we can plan our finances in such a way that we are able to benefit from this budget rather than ended up losing money on this. So thank you for watching this video, and if you have any further questions, something I haven't covered, something that is relevant to you, share it in the comment box. I definitely would like to discuss it and help you out with that. Take care and God bless you.